All right, so we just finished watching the NBA All-Star Weekend, all the contests and all the competitions for that and all the events. So, Trevon, what were your favorite things to watch over this All-Star Weekend, and what were some things that you were disappointed in during the All-Star Weekend while you were watching it?
Yeah, I think the All-Star weekend every year we find ourselves talking about pretty much the same thing as far as was it a success? And
Yeah.
ultimately the NBA with Adam Silver, we know he's a very business-minded type individual. And every year he's looking at numbers and data, analytics. That's what he goes by. He doesn't go by emotion or eye test. Obviously, those things are included, but he goes strictly off of the numbers, the viewership, and those things to determine if things were a success or not. But us as the fans, we have that. I don't want to say nostalgic, but we know what the standard is as far as what's been the best NBA All Star weekends, especially when it comes to the All Star games, dunk contests, and things of that nature. As a whole, I always get excited for the whole weekend of the event every year. For me personally, I think that the 3-point contest is probably the most consistent, the most stable. I think it is pretty entertaining because we have a lot of great shooters in the league. A lot of people are putting up high numbers and points. And then what they added this year in the one-on-one matchup between Steph Curry and Sabrina, I think that's opening the avenue. There's already been talks about possibly Clay partnering up with Steph. Caitlin Clark, as she leaves, goes to the WNBA, which we all assume she will, partnering up with Sabrina, maybe adding a second round to that contest, making it a little bit more longer after seeing some success this year, diving in and investing a little bit more time into that. So I think that's probably been the most consistent event throughout, probably at least for the past 5 years or so. Now, the dunk contest, I think that is very crucial in this whole weekend. I think that it has more of a potential than the 3-point contest because we've seen it at its highest. One of the probably the best dunk contest, maybe even ever, was that Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon dunk contest, and I believe that was 2016. That's almost 8 years ago, or something like that. And we haven't had a dunk contest exactly to that same level that gave us that same excitement, but we have had some pretty decent ones. Hamidou Diallo won one. I was just watching the highlights today. Derrick Jones had one. He went up against Aaron Gordon, with Aaron Gordon going back trying to win it again. We had Matt McClung last year. That surprised a lot of people, but I wouldn't put that as one of the best ones. But we've had some success with that. But this year, I think probably bad. And I think a big part of it wasn't necessarily because of the dunkers, when usually the dunkers are the ones that disappoint us in the dunk contest. I think the judges did a terrible job. I don't know what they were doing. Jaylen Brown should not have been in that final round. We were talking about it last night. He basically did a dab after the ball was dunked. It wasn't even in the air, or it was a look away, whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah, I
I
think I
think,
think Reggie Miller had said something like he looks like he's sneezing after he dunked the
yeah.
ball. So it was funny.
They're like, it looked like he sneezed, and it was the fact that it was after the dunk. So I think for the first year, I think the judges did really bad. Dwayne Wade did kind of do a little bad. Not, I wouldn't say
He
bad because it
robbed
could have went
he
either
robbed
way.
Aaron Gordon. He robbed Aaron
He
Gordon.
robbed Aaron Gordon, but it still was a tight contest, so it's not as
Yeah.
bad. But this year was pretty bad. Like when these events become boring, I think it's a problem. And I think the dunk contest was bad this year. Like I said, the 3-point contest was really good. I think that was the best event this whole weekend. And the All-Star game is just another thing we're gonna have to continue to see them try new things. I personally thought the captains was a probably one of the best ideas, I guess, to even the playing field. This year, I like that old school, going back to the East versus West, but you have players in there that aren't going to really play that hard. Jokic and Luka were out there flirting on the court, but not playing that hard the whole game. And the West had a lot of the older guys. The East had a lot of the younger guys willing to run up and down the court. But we've seen a lot of discourse about what should be an incentive to get these guys to play harder. I've seen ideas even as high as give the winning conference home court advantage in the finals, which is actually funny because I kind of had a similar thought. I was like, what if they could give some type of incentive for the finals? But then I realized I was like, I'm probably tripping with that because I think it was a similar type of discussion around the in-season tournament, giving like a similar incentive to that, and everybody realized that was a bad idea because it's so early in the season. You don't. It's not fair to give somebody that blanket for a whole season when there's like that's only a quarter of the season going on. So, as far as that, I think it's just ultimately going to come down to the players. Like Anthony Edwards said, nobody's really coming there to compete because he looks at it as a break, which is understandable because the All-Star game is like a day after some teams have games. Like they don't really get that true break. So I think there are gonna have to be some changes around that, but it wasn't that entertaining. I fell asleep on the game and I caught up on the highlights this morning. So it's I don't know what they're gonna do to make it better. So
Yeah, well, I had some internet issues last night, and my internet was going in and out, and it would be stretches where I would be able to watch it, but then it'll drop and then it'll come back. And honestly, I didn't miss anything. Just looking at what the parts that I did watch, I definitely didn't miss anything. So that's just where I'm at on it, in terms of just being a fan looking at it. But just to go back to what you said about Adam Silver, I think he definitely does take in data and looks at it, but he was visibly upset, last night after the effort from the guys on the court. And so
mhm.
I think he still does look at it from a product standpoint. The NBA is going into negotiations with different networks now in terms of new contracts to air their games on those specific networks. And the All-Star game is one of them. This year, Adam Silver had three kind of initiatives or three focuses for this season. One was the in-season tournament. He wanted guys to play hard in the in-season tournament. He wanted guys to play more games, especially on the national televised games, preventing teams from sitting their star players during those nationally televised games. And then the third one was the All-Star game. He wanted it to be more competitive. And I've seen the All-Star games from early 2000s all the way to now. And then I even go back and watch the older ones like in the 90s and stuff. From the 90s up until around 2010, like you can see the intensity, and of course it's not like an NBA finals game 7 intensity, but you can see them getting up and down the floor. Like I think it was like 2002, 2003, or whichever one I was watching, where Jason Kidd, when he's in the game, he's pushing, bro. He's getting up and down the court. AI, when he's in the
Mhm.
game, he's pushing. He's getting, like, they're getting up and down the court. The
Yeah.
year when Tim Duncan, Yao Ming, and Kevin Garnett were on the same Western Conference team, like you're getting contested at the rim. And some of that, I would say, from me watching it, I could see kind of a decline in the defensive intensity around
Yeah.
2011, 2012. That one of those seasons, like
Mhm.
you can kind of see it, but it wasn't as bad as now because even in those, they were still try. And by the time fourth quarter came, especially if it's a close game, you could see the intensity ramp up.
Mhm.
But back when, like I said, when Yao, Tim, and KG were in the paint, like they were, you were getting contested. Kobe and T Mac and MJ, they would D up on the perimeter. Like you're not just getting by and then getting a layup. You're gonna have to make at least 3, 4 moves to get by the perimeter defender because and of course they're not playing NBA finals defense or nothing like that, but you're just
Yeah.
not going to walk by there. It's not just Olay defense. And then once you
Mhm.
get by them, if you go to the lane, you're going to get contested by like 3 7-footers, 6'10", 7 foot guys. So
Yeah.
it's just different, man. And it's frustrating as a fan to want to see the game and then that's the
Yeah.
type of effort that they put out. And I get it. They don't want to get hurt. I get it. It's a break. But at the end of the day, the older guys, they put forth the effort.
Mhm.
And if that's the kind of product and that's the kind of effort we're going to get, Me as a fan, okay, that's cool if you feel that way, if you don't want to put forth the effort, but don't get upset if we point it out and say the older games are better, or the All-Star game
More
isn't what it used to
entertaining.
be. It's more entertaining,
Definitely.
so that's just where I'm at on the All-Star game. The dunk contest, I think it's
It's
just
hit or
not as
miss.
good as, yeah, it's just not as good as what it used to be.
Like we've had
Yeah,
we've
you
had
got it.
some we've had some decent years when I went back and saw they had a like compilation of the
Mhm.
dunk contest and everything. I know Matt McClung won the past two, but Derrick Jones Jr. The year he won was pretty decent. The year Diallo won in Charlotte, that was pretty decent. Like we've had some okay ones, you know what I'm saying? It's not like
Yeah,
it's just been terrible. A lot of people date back to the Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon one. That was probably the highest peak. Some people said probably the best dunk contest
that's
of all time.
yeah, that's the best one
So
I've seen myself.
same for me. And like if that's your standard, I don't think it's fair to have that your standard because it's
Fair.
only if
Yeah,
you're saying that's the best of all time, then that means we haven't seen one like that before. So to make that
yeah,
your standard isn't really fair. I think to make one your standard is a very competitive one, but not Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon type level. So I think it is fair to say
yeah.
the dunk contest is pretty decent. Like it's hit or miss. It's not like the 3-point contest where there's not too many wow factors unless somebody's going to hit every shot, but it's a lot more easier to kind of keep that competitiveness in a 3-point contest than it is for the dunk contest. Because a lot of these players now, I will say the thing is, a lot of these players that go in the dunk contest now are people that you either don't really see get that much playing time or players that you don't even know that's in the league. Like Obi Toppin's brother, I didn't even know he was associated with the NBA. And then Matt McClung coming out the G League, which makes it cool because he wins the dunk contest. But if he wasn't winning the dunk contest, then I think we would kind of be like, why are we putting a G Leaguer in the NBA? Not to say they're not talented, can't play, but it's just like this is the NBA All-Star. It's so I think it's a lot of things that go into that. But with the All-Star game specifically, it's just a mentality that these players are gonna have to change. I think